unfold. All right, today we're diving into one of the most famous and, frankly, one of the most terrifying studies in the history of psychology. We're talking about Stanley Milgram's experiment on obedience.
65%. If you know anything about the Milgram experiment, you know this number. It's the percentage of regular, everyday people who were willing to deliver what they thought was a fatal electric shock to a total stranger just because a guy in a lab coat told them to.
But is that really the whole story? Not even close. You see, the real story here isn't just about a number. It's this incredible, high-stakes psychological drama, a battle that happens right inside our own minds, when what we know is right goes head-to-head with what we're told to do.
So, let's set the scene. The year is 1961, and you've got these two major dramas playing out at the exact same time. One is this huge global event, and the other, well, it's happening in a quiet little basement in New Haven. But both of them, they were about to completely rewrite our understanding of evil.
So on one side, you've got Adolf Eichmann on trial in Jerusalem. This is the guy who organized the logistics of the Holocaust. I mean, the entire world was watching, expecting to see a pure, diabolical monster. And then, at the very same time, back in a lab at Yale, you have this totally average American citizen who just volunteered for a simple memory study. Two very different men, right? But both of them were about to force us to look in the mirror and face a really, really uncomfortable truth.
And here's where it gets interesting. The philosopher Hannah Arendt was there, covering the trial, and she was just floored. Because Eichmann wasn't some raving, foaming-at-the-mouth monster. He was normal, terrifyingly normal. He was just a bureaucrat, a pencil pusher obsessed with efficiency and train schedules. So she came up with this now famous phrase, the banality of evil. The idea that the worst things in the world aren't done by fanatics, but by ordinary people, just following orders, just doing their jobs without thinking.
Now, this idea is exactly what inspired Stanley Milgram. He set up his lab less like a science experiment and more like, well, like a piece of theater. It was a carefully constructed stage, and the whole point was to trap the person at the center of it in this impossible moral dilemma. And every play needs a cast, right? So you had three main characters. First, the experimenter. He's the authority figure, all stern and serious in a gray lab coat. He represents the cold, faceless system. Then you have the learner, this friendly, mild-mannered guy who's supposed to be the victim. And finally, the teacher. This is the only real participant, the actual subject of the study. They think they've been randomly assigned this role, but, surprise, the whole thing is rigged. They're the star of the show, and they don't even know the play's already been written.
And just look at the prop they were given. This is the shock generator. It's a brilliant piece of psychological design. It's not just a simple button. It's this big, intimidating piece of equipment. And look at those labels. Slight shock, okay? Then strong shock, intense shock, all the way up to danger, severe shock. And then, at the very end, just XX. Every single time they flipped a switch, they were forced to acknowledge, in writing, how much more violent their actions were becoming.
So that's the stage. Now let's talk about the script. Because this is how a simple memory test was engineered to spiral into what felt like a life-or-death situation. Okay, so the learner's reactions were all pre-recorded, but the timing was everything. It starts small. At 75 volts, just a little grunt of pain, no big deal. But then you hit 150 volts. And this is the big plot twist. The learner screams that he has a heart condition and wants out. Suddenly, this isn't about causing a little discomfort anymore. Now it's about potentially killing someone. By 300 volts, he's just shrieking. And then, at 330 volts, just silence. Awful, terrifying silence.
So, when the participant starts to hesitate, how does the experimenter get them to continue? He doesn't yell or threaten them. No, he just uses these four very calm, very measured phrases. They're called prods. Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. And then the final one. You have no other choice. You must go on. It's brilliant in a terrifying way. It's designed to take away their sense of personal choice and make obedience feel like it's just a requirement of the situation itself.
Now here's a really important part of the story. The people doing this, the teachers, they weren't just cold, unfeeling robots. Not at all. When you look at the observations from the lab, these people were in agony. This was a full-blown war going on inside their heads.
I mean, just listen to what the observers saw.
People were sweating buckets, they were trembling, stuttering. Some were literally digging their fingernails into their own skin. A lot of them started laughing, this weird, nervous, uncontrollable laughter. And get this, 3 participants had seizures. Actual, violent seizures, just from the sheer psychological stress of it all. So no, they were not enjoying this one bit.
And you can hear the struggle in their own words. They're begging the experimenter to let them stop. They're arguing with him. I mean, listen to this quote from one guy. "I'm not going to kill that man in there. You hear him hollering? I refuse to take the responsibility." He's practically screaming at the guy in the lab coat.
And yet, after all that, after yelling that he wouldn't be a killer, when the experimenter calmly insisted, that same man sat back down in his chair and kept flipping the switches. That's the terrifying part. Despite everything screaming inside them to stop, the power of that situation, of that calm authority figure, was just too strong.
So the big question is, why? Why did so many people obey? Well, Milgram's results give us the pretty chilling answer. But there's also a silver lining. Because when he started tweaking the experiment, he found a few glimmers of hope. He found the recipe for resistance.
Before he ran the experiment, Milgram actually asked a bunch of psychologists what they thought would happen. And they predicted that pretty much nobody would go all the way to 450 volts. Maybe, 1 or 2%, the truly sadistic people. The reality? 65%. Almost 2/3 of ordinary people went all the way. That result just blew up everything we thought we knew about morality.
So how do you explain that? Well, Milgram came up with this idea he called the Agentic State. It's like a mental flip gets switched. You no longer see yourself as an autonomous person making your own choices. Instead, you become an agent for someone else. You're just a tool carrying out their wishes. And the best part? All that responsibility, all that guilt, it just gets passed up the chain to the person in charge. You're off the hook.
But, and this is a huge but, that spell could be broken. Milgram found the keys to resistance. Check this out. When he had the experimenter give orders over the phone instead of standing right there, obedience plummeted to about 20%. But the real game changer, when he put 2 other teachers in the room, actors of course, and had them defy the experimenter, obedience basically collapsed. It dropped all the way down to just 10%. Seeing someone else say no gave them the power to say no too.
Okay, so this wasn't just some weird thing that happened in a lab back in the 60s. The scary truth is, the dynamics Milgram discovered, we've seen them play out in the real world, time and time again.
Think about this. Years later, in 2004, a prank caller gets on the phone with a McDonald's manager. He pretends to be a cop, and he convinces that manager to strip search a young female employee over the phone. It's Milgram all over again. Someone claiming to have authority completely overrides another person's basic sense of right and wrong. The lab wasn't a lab anymore, it was the real world. Now it's easy to think, oh, that was then. We're smarter now, we're more aware, right? Wrong. In 2009, a researcher named Jerry Berger did a partial replication of the experiment. The results? Basically identical. 70% of participants were still willing to go past that critical 150-volt point, the point where the man screams about his heart condition. The lesson is, we haven't changed.
So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? I think it's that the real villain isn't some evil person. It's not a monster. The villain is a situation. Milgram's work suggests that the capacity to flip that final, horrible switch, the one marked XXX, it exists inside every single one of us. It's just waiting for the right circumstances, the right pressures to be unlocked. So the question isn't if you would obey. The really terrifying question is, what situation would it take to make you obey?